Welcome everybody, DIY with Jane time. So we're gonna make a rose heart today. That's what I'm working on right now, a rose heart. So this is the IOD Roses mold. And I pre-made these and now I'm just gluing them down. I've glued most of them down, but I thought I'd glue about, I don't know, about a third of it down with you guys. These are the rose molds. This is the new rose mold from IOD. And I'm going to show you a real clever, we're going to paint this thing here in a minute, and then I'm going to show you a real clever trick to making some colored wax. So I made my molds yesterday, and if y'all are curious, it took about a pack of paper clay to make all of this. So I thought that was pretty good, really, because some of these molds are really large.
Yeah, they are large.
So I started with a half I already had opened, and I used it plus another half. So it took about one pack to get this design on this board. This is a round from Home Depot. It's where I got it from. Let me just move this over. And this is just a little cup of glue. This is just plain Titebond. Actually, no, this is Gorilla. This is Gorilla wood glue I'm using today. Gorilla wood glue. All right, so we've got it. We've got all of our elements glued down into place now. And I was using the Gorilla Glue wood glue. It works really fast. It's almost as good as Titebond. I have these little small, they're actually like little medicine cups. And I just put my glue down in here. And then when I'm finished, I just throw this away. I don't try to save that glue, okay? I keep this brush in water, so I'm just dabbing a little bit of the water off.
Hey, Flower, how are
I like
you?
to start with a wet brush, but I don't want it to be dripping wet. So I'm just going to kind of paint around the roses now with this white paint. And this won't take long to dry.
DIY paint never takes long to dry.
So we may have to hit it with the blow dryer a little bit, but not for much. So I want to have a good coat of paint on here, but I don't want it to be so thick that I have problems getting it dry. And this paint, since DIY paint is so heavily pigmented, it doesn't really take a lot of paint to get good coverage. So you don't really have to have a real thick coat of paint here, okay? And these molds really soak the paint up because they're so porous and they haven't been sealed, and so they'll dry really quickly. So I'm just trying to kind of smooth out where my paint's puddled a little bit before we put the dryer on here. All right, I think that looks pretty good. And these flowers are already starting to dry. I can see them already soaking the paint in. Just where it's puddled a little, I want to get that off of there. No puddling. I don't want no puddling paint on my roses. We're going to give it a little help here. It won't take it long. All right, so now we're going to use a little bit of clear wax on on our project. Before you use a colored wax, you always want to use a clear wax. And that gives you the ability to manipulate your colored wax, okay? So I'm just going to take a little bit of this and spatula it out on this piece. This is just saran wrap. You don't want to contaminate your wax, so you never want to dip your brush into your wax. You always want to keep your brush. And I have a brush for every color. For clear, I don't have a brush for the color we're going to use today, but for my clear, my brown, and my black, and the shipwrecked, I have a brush for every one of those, okay? Yeah. So I've loaded my brush, and now I'm going to work it into my brush. I'm just going to use my craft paper that I have here to get the wax worked into my brush, and then I'm just going to start applying it to my piece lightly. Now, please bear in mind that we are working on an uncured surface, so although I've dried it, It is not a cured surface. So you want to brush this lightly. So if you feel like you need to use a little bit more, you know, a generous application of the wax, usually, you know, you want to put your wax on a kind of a light coat. But since we're working on an uncured surface, I'm probably going to apply my wax a little bit heavier than I would if this were totally dry. My rule of thumb is 24 hours between processes. So, for instance, once I paint something, I like to wait 24 hours before I seal it. It's not necessary to do that, but it certainly helps eliminate some of the problems you have when you're trying to push something and it's not, you know, totally dry. That's when a lot of people get into trouble and their paint will lift and things like that. It's just not thoroughly cured, and it's really better if you can wait in between your processes. Everybody doesn't subscribe to that philosophy. Other people will tell you that that's not necessary, and you know, they're right too. But I like to just take my time and make sure that I don't have any fails, because I don't generally like to do things twice. All right, I think that's pretty good there.
Clear.
And so here's what I wanted to show you. You can take your clear wax and pigments and make any color of wax you want. This is this wax, just plain clear.
DIY paint, clear.
DIY paint, DIY clear wax, and this is the red date night pigment. And so I took just a small amount of that pigment. Maybe my little paint, this little paint knife, maybe it was half that I picked up on here and stirred into my wax and got that brilliant red. So anyway, here's this red wax, and now that's what we're going to use on our roses, okay? And we're going to highlight our roses with this red wax. So again, I'm going to pick up the wax on my brush. And I purposefully did mine, if you see, it's really not balanced. In other words, this big rose is not across from a big rose. These two little roses are, I did that on purpose because in art, your eyes like for things to be symmetrical. They don't necessarily like for them to be balanced. There's a big difference between symmetry and balance. So I'm just going to run around the edges of this. And, you know, some of the wax is getting on the board, but I'm not really too worried about
but you
that.
You can wipe it off because you got
You should be able to wipe it off. You know, you're probably, because you've got such a high contrast, I don't know that you'll get it all off, in honesty, if you get it on there. So I just use torn up old dish towels for rags. You can use an old t-shirt, anything that's lint free. You can even use these shop towels, these blue shop towels if you prefer. But we're just going to kind of lightly start to rub this back here, and you'll see how the detail is going to start to shine. Actually, I'm going to leave that one because it needs a little more wax. These over here are going to be prettier. That one is gorgeous. Look at that. Y'all, they may not be able to see it that well yet. So see the detail in that large rose? See how it stayed in the low places and just highlighted it? So it just made a beautiful,
it's
beautiful rose. And as you work your way around your piece, you're going to get wax on your, obviously you're going to get wax on your rag. And you're going to need to just keep finding a clean place, okay? If you want to continue, because you'll just wind up laying the wax back down again, see? So now you can see it. There you go. I'm glad y'all thought that was pretty. I think it turned out pretty nice. You know, when you embark on these different things, doing things, you're never really quite sure how they're going to turn out, but I like it. I think it'll be pretty when it's finished. So thanks for joining us. And thanks. Peace. Thanks for being here with us today. We appreciate you. Y'all have a happy Valentine's Day. Take care.